join you in person or by video. But definitely excited to support how I can. It's either in December or January, and figure things out. Yeah, Bobby, did you want me to give a little introduction about myself, what I do?
Yeah, so a little bit about yourself, but also what the trainings have been like that you've done so far, and what you wanted, why you wanted to bring it to the IE, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I, like Bobby said, grew up in the Inland Empire. Went to school in, well, back then what was Riverside County, what is now Jurupa Valley. And, have been working campaigns and elections for almost 2 decades now. So basically for the past, I would say 9-10 years, my focus has been nothing but local races, kind of state level and down. The reason being is because me personally, as a political operative for almost 20 years, I really saw the biggest impact at the local level, and so wanting to support that impact and make it actually happen. We as the folks who work at my firm, we successfully turned several seats in the Bay Area, and I know that to many the Bay Area is considered, progressive, but we definitely have our share of moderate and conservative folks out here. We've been turning city council, both in Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda, San Leandro, and then working on county races and school board races. The big fight we have out here is the charter schools. So I've run campaigns where we were outspent, 8-1, to defend seats against charter schools. So my vision for kind of these trainings and what we're looking at is I've been approached by some progressive donors who want to see more progressives in office, want to see more progressives in local office, and really want to support the movement through the only way they know how, and that's through throwing money at it. So what we've been able to do is kind of pull together some trainings for what they consider, areas of interest and hotspots. So, areas that either have a large, voting able ethnic minority group. So we're looking at Central Valley area, Imperial County, out by San Diego, areas where we have either a large ethnic minority or ethnic majority, at least in terms of population and voting group, but not representation in local governance. That is one of the criterias. Another criteria is, an area that we have either a younger progressive population, and so they're trying to kind of turn those areas and make them shift slightly more left than where they are, ideally creating a progressive mecca throughout the entire state. So short of that, my goal is really to give the tools needed to both candidates and campaign operatives. One of the big shortages we have in the Bay Area is campaign operatives, campaign managers, field directors, folks who are able to work these progressive campaigns and get actual people into office. So that's been one of the big focuses for us, is to really hone in on the campaign operative side. You know, and then on the other side are the actual candidates who, you know, many times progressive races, as you all, you know, may know, like, can't afford to hire the Sacramento consultants, can't afford to hire the LA consultants, you know, the consultants who are charging $3 to $5 to $10 grand a month to run a campaign, and it's just not feasible for a grassroots operation. So for us, what we want to do is eventually create a handbook, you know, that we can distribute and say, okay, kind of here's what's going on. And, you know, I know that there are several that already exist out there. PCCC has one. You know, Wellstone obviously has one. You know, but definitely trying to figure out a way that we can best support progressive campaigns that don't always require an actual consultant to figure that out. Yeah, now I've talked too much, and you know, I'll turn it over to someone else.
Well, I just wanted to give folks at least a chance to hear from you and sort of say, you know, what the motivation is behind this. And Carlos reached out to me, sort of asking, like, what was our plan coming up into the next election. And we had supported in terms of, we did our first election season in 2018, where we were consulting on a very limited level with a few candidates that we really believed in, Socorro and Ermelina being two of them. But really, when it came down to running the field campaign and the things that mattered, really brought to light how shorthanded and under capacity we were. So we decided to take the focus to train campaign operatives where we could, and to support, provide as much as we could, the tools to candidates to bring their own folks in and get this information and share with it, so that we can. So it kind of just was, you know, the universe aligning with Carlos having this project at a state level, and then connecting with us. So any last words for you to the crowd in terms of like what particular days will work best in December and January, and a last message of like what they should be doing right now in terms of crafting a message, coming up with a plan, or sort of the first step of a campaign as a volunteer or as a candidate. That was a lot. Carlos?
Yeah, sorry, you cut out there at the end. But I think what you were asking was like any last thoughts around what folks should be doing now, either from a candidate or perspective or volunteer perspective. Yeah. So hold on. I'm trying to think of language that's not going to scare folks. That's always my biggest criticism. So I think that I think there's a couple of different buckets right now. You know, let's look at if anyone's running a campaign or working on a campaign that is primaried. So March is your deadline. You know, hopefully you have your campaign off the ground, because as of today you have 115 days until the primaries. You know, I think. What was that?
You just gave everybody heart palpitations.
Yeah, you know, I do it to myself. But yeah, 115 days until the primary and 360 days until the general. That's where we're at. You know, so that's the reality. Like if we're looking at a primary race right now, hopefully, you know, it's off the ground or getting off the ground. Grassroots campaigns, obviously, you know, volunteers are the bread and butter. A strong field campaign with, you know, dozens or hundreds of volunteers out there is the thing. If you are a candidate, engage your volunteers now. You know, if you don't have a campaign to engage volunteers now, then go do cleanups at the park in your district, or go do, you know, any activity you can do to get people out and engaged and motivated, because the number one thing that can kill a campaign early on is lack of volunteer engagement. You know, you have 100 people who show up to a campaign kickoff or a launch or, you know, whatever, you know, it needs to be like right away. And you need to keep those volunteers engaged constantly, because if not, you know, they're going to get one of the texts that I'm getting every day from Bernie's campaign, or they're going to get, you know, another campaign who's going to say, hey, come out and walk with us, and you're going to lose them. You know, obviously, money is you know, is needed, and that's the reality. You know, no matter how great of a volunteer base that you are running, like, the reality is you need money. You need money to pay for data. You need money to pay for printing, for lawn signs, for, you know, mail. If you end up sending mail, for volunteer snacks, like you need a base operating budget. So, you know, I don't know if anybody in the room has the idea of running a campaign on, you know, $100, but the reality is, like, you're gonna need some capital. So raise money often, raise money early, raise as much money as you possibly can. Ask people over and over and over again until they say no, and then ask them again in about a week. And then when they stop returning your phone calls, then you can stop asking. The other piece, like, for campaign operatives, you know, right now it's about pulling together resources. You know, the reality is campaign managers on grassroots campaigns are everything. They're the messaging director, they're the field director, the campaign manager. You know, they're basically everything. So for the candidates on the call or in the room, you know, treat them well, pay them if you can. But, you know, definitely remember that a huge part of the work, especially if the candidate is being the candidate, a huge amount of the work of a campaign is on the shoulders of a campaign manager, a campaign director. So, you know, build your team, find volunteers, people you can trust, sleep and hydrate. I know it sounds silly, but seriously, sleep, hydrate, and eat lots of protein, because that's what gets you through campaigns. The bag of boiled eggs from Costco, yeah, you just throw that in the fridge, and, you know, that's 70 calories an egg. You know, you divide that by your 19-hour day, you're good. But yeah, you know, I think obviously messaging is important. Messaging is, you know, a real strong component of a campaign. But I think reality is, you know, it starts with the volunteer base and the money. You have to have one of those to really move forward. And one of those should be super strong, and the other one should be as strong as you can make it. Because if you don't have the dollars, then you have the people on the ground. And if you don't have the people on the ground, then you have the dollars to hire people on the ground.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Carlos, for taking some time out this morning and sharing with us. We're going to get to work on, I think, yeah, and we have a question. Yeah. So you might need to talk about it.
Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you. If you could speak up a little, it'd be great.
Okay, I can move closer.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Miranda. I'm the person who's running in Pomona City Council. And I was able to get some data about the demographics of my district. And, you know, I'm an African American young woman who's running a primarily Latino district. And I wanted to know what has been your experience when those are the dynamics.
Mm-hmm. You know, let's to not admit that there have been divides within Black and Brown communities for decades would be a lie. You know, that's the reality. That's the reality we face. I think, so from my experience in looking at situations where that is the case, you know, the reality is at the end of the day, the both, you know, Black voters and brown voters are values voters. So I think to both demographics, you're looking at a big education platform, you know, honestly not knowing much about where you're running. You know, like I think education speaks to both values of both demographic groups. You know, and really I think it's focusing on those pieces. It's focusing on the values. It's focusing on the message rather than, you know, than the image of the candidate. You know, and really, like, I think for me in past campaigns, it has been about just getting out there in the community and showing, you know, that you are as a part of the community as anyone. Yeah, but I think messaging boils down to values, and a lot of Latinx voters are you know, big education value.
Thank you.
Go show up to a kermés or something.
Right. Okay, well, thanks again, Carlos. Does anybody else have any other questions, thoughts? No.
Nice hearing you again. I took part in, I think it was 2016, 2015, with Blanca Gomez had ran for Victorville.
Do you remember that, Carlos?
Yes,
At
I
Abigail's
remember.
office? Yeah.
All the follow-up text messages.
So yeah, so again, thanks for taking the time, and I think you've planted some really good seeds here, and we'll really work. I have I've engaged a team to help me plan a little bit more so that we get the program that folks are going to need here on the ground. Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And we'll check in more.